Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Professional. I'm your host, Rilley Ramos, and we are recording from Indianapolis, Indiana. So we actually just finished our mid-year meeting, and so what perfect time to record another episode, right? So before we introduce our special guest, let's go through our usual housekeeping. This episode is brought to you by the national chapter of Beta Alpha Psi. Enormous appreciation for their support. Make sure to sign up for the alumni member network if you haven't already. And so we can easily connect and have y'all experience all the benefits that the network has to offer. And then, of course, our disclaimer, the opinions in this podcast are our own and may not reflect the position of Beta Alpha Psi or our respective employers as a whole. So, housekeeping, check. All right, so I'm pretty stoked for today's guest, as he is my fellow BAP board member, chapter advocate for the Midwest region, and chairman of our upcoming annual meeting in Orlando, Florida. So he is a professor at Ball State University. Please welcome our special guest, Jason Stanfield.
Thank you, Rilley.
Of course, happy to finally have you on the conference. Yeah. We just ended an amazing meeting here in Indianapolis. So this is the first time for me to be out here. So it's a really cool area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a mixed time of year to be here. On the one hand, it's March Madness. Basketball is a pretty big deal here in Indiana. On the other hand, the color of the month is gray.
Yeah.
It's definitely still that winter grayish. We've not had a lot of snow this year. We've not even had a ton of rain, but we have had just a lot of these gray days. But again, we get basketball and other fun things to look forward to. So we kind of make up for the weather attraction with the other stuff. I know a couple of chapters went and saw a Pacers game.
Did they? Oh my gosh, I'm jealous.
On Thursday evening, they played the Timberwolves, I believe, and went and enjoyed that. We're just a couple blocks away from the field house here at the hotel. So it was good timing for those folks.
Yeah, I remember I believe it was at an annual meeting. It may have been the Chicago meeting. I went to my first, my first NFL game. It was a good time. So
yeah, I'm always encouraging students in chapters to, if they're able to, timing and resources and everything else, but spend a day in the city before or after the programming when they travel to take it. There's something everywhere. Mm-hmm. I am not going to try to sell Indianapolis, Indiana as the first highlight destination you should pick for your vacation. There are places that probably excite more people, but there are great, awesome things just about everywhere, including here. We're really close to the state capitol, close to the Indiana State Museum downtown. We are close to Lucas Oil, where the Colts play. We're close to the field house where the Pacers play. We're a short car ride away from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where the Indianapolis 500s run in May, and the NASCAR race, the Brickyard, later in the year. Mm-hmm. There's always, right? Every city we go to has things for students to do and see and experience. And sometimes there are things students think of quickly as being fun. Sometimes there are things that students might have to open their minds up to a little bit. But I also hear afterwards that, man, that was one of the best things I did. I actually heard one of the faculty advisors telling me yesterday that they remembered the last time we were here doing a tour of the racetrack and getting to kiss the bricks at the end, and that had stuck with them. And yeah, I think people enjoy those things. And let's be honest, as much as I value and love the program we provide at these meetings, and we work really hard to do great programming. Mm-hmm. If I ask you what your favorite program was during our Las Vegas meeting last summer, you might deer in headlights me and I'm trying to remember what we did at that. But if I ask you what was your favorite moment from the trip, I bet you got one quick.
Yeah.
That it's not always just about the programming. That doesn't mean the programming is not important. That should be the draw. But we also recognize that for many attendees, the most important thing that comes out of it's the networking and building relationships, making connections that you wouldn't otherwise make. And even if you don't ever need those particular connections, just learning how to build those connections and build those relationships and taking that skill with you to your first job and beyond is one of the most valuable things that comes from being involved in Beta Alpha Psi and attending these meetings.
Right. So it really is a lifelong membership, and that's something that we try to really push out there that even when you're finished with your college career, your membership in Beta Alpha Psi doesn't end there. It's our alumni. We are always trying to push the envelope when it comes to maintaining that engagement with our alumni.
Sure.
And stuff like this, and having great speakers like you on here. And it's just a great way to have more engagement and show like what else there is when it comes to maintaining that engagement post-graduation. So before we get into the details of anything, let's talk about origin story. So first off, where'd you go to school, and what made you decide on your major?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I will do a little bit of confessional here. And when I taught, my first teaching job was at Purdue University, which is also where I got my undergraduate degree and my doctoral degree. And so when I taught at Purdue, I would usually put up my transcript the first day of class, and we would have a good laugh at it. And I would say at the end of this time, I would say one of two things you can take from this exercise. Either one, you should be going to the dean's office and complaining that they're not hiring qualified faculty. Or two, when I tell you to do something, it's because I didn't, and I know what happens when you don't. Mm-hmm. I was the absolute worst kind of college student for my own best interest. I didn't get involved. I find it very sad to say I don't have any friends from college. I didn't build relationships when I was an undergrad. I went to classes. I did some amount of work to get a grade that was good enough eventually. Sometimes after 2 or 3 tries at that class, but eventually a grade that was good enough. And I just didn't take it seriously. And as much as I regret that and wish I had taken it more seriously for the learning and the education's perspective, what I really do regret is that I didn't take that opportunity to build relationships. And now, as I look at former students that are doing things in their lives, and when they get back together and they've got their college friends and they're in support for, weddings and baby showers and, cool stuff like that. I never had that experience, and only my own fault. I mean, it was entirely because I chose to, for starters, I had the attitude that if the university couldn't provide me convenient parking, I didn't have to go to class. And that's a really bad attitude to have, right? That the university was happy to continue cashing my check, whether I went to class or not. So I did it all wrong. I mean, I really I could go on for our entire hour of the ways I screwed up undergrad and did it poorly. Fortunately, while I was an undergrad, I got engaged. Okay. And I think that I would like to say my wife, kicked me into high gear. She really didn't. She's pretty laid back and let me be me. I think for me, some of that provider instinct kicked in on the basis that my wife, I knew, was going to need another year of schooling to finish her degree because she had transferred schools. Okay. And I was like, well, we need to eat, and I don't want to live with her parents or mine. So we need to, we're going to have to get out. And that kind of motivated me to, I better start working, taking things seriously. But it really wasn't until I was doing my graduate education at Ball State, ironically, or coincidentally, I guess is the better word. I was pursuing an MBA online and doing it with the intentions of furthering the career I was in at the time, which was sales. And I got into that MBA program, and actually I got really depressed. And it took me months to figure out why I was in this funk. And I finally realized it was because for the first time, I was realizing what a luxury it was to get to learn and to have people that know things being willing to share those things with you or being paid to share those things with you. And I started I could have done some cool stuff in my undergrad. I mean, I went to Purdue. I went to a world-class university with literally, I say that because people from all over the world know this brand for its reputation in the hard sciences and all these things. And all these cool things are going on. We got Nobel winners on that campus, right? And I didn't take advantage of any of that. So I kind of got, like I said, kind of depressed and, really regretted that. And then that slowly transitioned into, well, I can do something about it. If I really want to be learning, what could I do? And I am first generation college. So
Got
I
it.
didn't know anything about the idea of what it took to become a professor. But I did start to think I might want to teach. And I started learning about doctoral programs. I learned about, so here's something, if there's students listening that don't know this, you can often go to a PhD program and not pay for it. You can get funded, get a stipend or get other financial support and actually go to school on their buck instead of yours in exchange for providing some teaching assistance or research assistance. So despite my horrific undergraduate record, and let me make clear, when I say horrific, I was on probation a couple times.
Oh man.
I took,
Watch out.
Yeah, I took a physics class that I was not required to take 3 times because of just stubborn stupidity. I mean, I did it wrong, guys. I'm not kidding. It was really a lot of bad decisions, but I wouldn't change them for anything now. I guess. I mean, things have turned out very well for me, and they inform the way I approach the classroom. But yeah, by being in that position of not knowing what I didn't know, I just didn't realize I could get a PhD. I didn't know it was even an option. And when I started exploring it, I was fortunate that despite maybe my technical skills not being the best, as demonstrated by my GPA, my GMAT score was respectable, but not great by any stretch. But the couple of faculty that I had at Purdue that I had made a little bit of an effort with towards the end of my studies when I got serious, they remembered me. And one of my favorite stories to tell about networking and the importance of just like being there and showing up is the day I graduated in the summer of 2001 with my undergraduate degree, I parked in the parking garage, probably just about the farthest from where I needed to be on campus for graduation. And it was 90 degrees. And walking in those robes, it was just awful. And lo and behold, one of my faculty from my undergrad had done the same thing. So she and I made that 10-minute walk across campus and suffered. But I talked to her in those 10 minutes more than I had ever talked to a professor in my life. And because I hadn't been a great student, I didn't know who to reach out to talk about PhD programs or to talk to about getting a recommendation. But I wrote that professor and reminded her of that I had been in her class. I owned the fact that I wasn't a really particularly great student, so she may not remember me from there.
Right.
But you might remember me from this. And I told that story. And she did remember me from that. And slowly we talked back and forth, and that ultimately transitioned into an offer to be in their PhD program at Purdue that wouldn't have happened, right, if it wasn't just for being there. Many students I don't know if I want to do graduation. I don't know if I want to go through that trouble. If it's just to make mom and dad or whoever happy, and so much of people saying right place, right time, they leave out the most important condition, which is being there at all. Right. Being in the right place, being there at the right time are great. But if you weren't there at any time, you can't even have a chance to be there at the right time or in the right place. And because of that, I don't think I would be where I'm at had it not been for that afternoon, because just that random, choice or thing. So I did my PhD at Purdue. I found out later that professor, her husband was also a professor in the program, and I found out later that he had bet his wife that I wouldn't make it 6 weeks.
Oh man!
Because I was so woefully underprepared for what they expected me to be able to do. While I beat the odds, he wasn't wrong to place that bet. He probably, with the information he had, he was probably right. I barely made it through, but I did. And motivated by the fact that I thought I really wanted to be in the classroom. And then slowly learned to kind of enjoy research and things. And I spent 4 years there at Purdue after I finished my PhD as a non-tenure track faculty that was focused exclusively on teaching. And I still had the opportunity, despite that, to have some research success on a project with some other people. That turned into Ball State offering me the opportunity to interview. And I really wasn't looking for a job, but I did go ahead and interview, and I fell in love with the school, with the institution and its mission, and the kinds of students there. As much as a big part of my heart is still at Purdue in that regard, I've been at Ball State now for pushing 10 years.
Wow.
And absolutely love it, and enjoy working with. We have a lot of first generation students. We have a lot of students that perhaps like myself were not maybe the most motivated, or maybe their attitude about things is not the best. Like they need that culture and mentoring atmosphere. And I feel like I can do some good there by being able to say, I get it. I understand how you feel. I can also tell you the consequences of that, because my life has turned out pretty great. No question. I am thrilled with my professional life, but I had to work an awful lot harder for many years in there to claw myself out of the hole I had dug by not just putting in that time up front. So I think it makes me, relatable in that
Oh, big time.
regard. And it makes me leave at the end of the day feeling like, I did something that mattered today. I saved somebody from themselves. Something they didn't know, or something they would have done with good intention, but would have actually been self-sabotaging. And in the process, I've made up for not having college friends, because I now have college friends from former students and colleagues and everything else. I've had that privilege, and I've had multiple opportunities to do some pretty great things with former students as friends and be part of their lives after graduation. Happy to share and talk on those if you want later, but it's made it a very rewarding path for me. So that's kind of my story and how I've got to where I'm at. I was asked when I started teaching at Purdue to take over as the Beta Alpha Psi advisor. I didn't know what Beta Alpha Psi was. I knew we had an accounting association, a club there at Purdue, and I was going to advise it, and I was going to advise this Beta Alpha Psi thing. And I immediately was just impressed with what Beta Alpha Psi was providing to students. This opportunity, like, man, if I had seen this as an undergrad myself, would this have motivated me? Would I have understood what the competition looks like? Would I have understood, like, there's people out there that face the same challenges as me, but they're making different decisions than mine and getting better outcomes as a result. And just, fell in love with it. So I was a faculty advisor at Purdue and then at Ball State. And one of my good friends, our current president, Mark Myring, was a chapter advocate several years ago, and made it look fun. And so I said, well, I'll give it a shot. So I signed up to do that. And we have a wonderful faculty advisor at Ball State now instead of me. So I get to kind of sit on the sidelines and just watch the cool stuff BAP does at Ball State. And then in my role as chapter advocate, I get to see what other chapters are doing and bring it back to them as well.
Now, just a quick comment, as far as the parking situation at universities, they definitely need to do a better job. That is very relatable for every student, especially our commuter students.
And I was a commuter student. I was living, Purdue, for those that don't know, is located in West Lafayette, Indiana, about an hour northwest of here in Indianapolis, where we are. And I live within about a mile of every house I've ever lived in my life today.
Really?
Not intentionally. I've often thought we would move and the various career things would make that happen, but it just hasn't. A variety of things instead have kept us in place, family things and whatnot. But as Purdue is not really a commuter-friendly campus, it never has been. That doesn't mean there aren't commuting students, but the campus is not built around it. And so, back then they sold an unlimited number of parking permits. For the student commuter spots.
It feels like that.
And if you're
definitely feels like that.
If you're like me and think that people really shouldn't schedule things that have single digits involved in the morning, I didn't want to get there early enough to get a spot. I would drive around for 20 minutes, not be able to get a spot. Didn't want to park an hour away and walk or whatever I thought it was. I'm sure it wasn't that. And so, I would just skip class and somehow thought that was okay. And it went about as well as you would expect it would, Riley.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that you served as a faculty advisor, and that was your initial exposure to Beta Alpha Psi.
Yeah.
How was that? What is it like to serve as a faculty advisor, and then as well as a chapter advocate? And I believe the roles are different from each other.
Very. So I'll start by saying a chapter advocate's role is largely administrative.
Okay.
We do provide mentoring and counseling to the faculty advisors or to officers. We try to troubleshoot issues that come up. We kind of act as a liaison between the national office and the chapters, but it is primarily administrative. I don't put on, events or anything, or assist the students with doing that like I did as an advisor. This mid-year meeting is the biggest event I'm typically in this role associated with planning or putting together. But the role as a faculty advisor is very diverse, and it varies greatly between institutions. It varies greatly between chapters, and even the person and what they want to do. So as an example, when I was at Purdue, when I came in, the previous advisor had really kind of taken a hands-off approach, and that chapter's officers really, they ran that chapter. I was truly an advisor. They didn't come and ask me to do things unless they were things that only the advisor could do. Otherwise, they were very much self-starters. They managed that. There were a couple years in that time where I had to step in and do more because, an officer didn't do their job, or those things happen in any organization. But normally I was really kind of hands off. So I was very surprised when I came to Ball State and found that the advisor was very hands on. The officers were very dependent on the advisor. I worked hard to transition away from that, that I wanted the students to have more responsibility and to take ownership. This
really
is their
empower
organization.
the students.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, this isn't mine. This programming is not for me. By that point in my career, I'm kind of hoping I never have to interview for another job. So interviewing skills are not really, what I'm looking for. This isn't for me, it's for you. And trying to, get the students to step up and do those things. And they did. They did a wonderful job of stepping up. But still, I would say overall at Ball State, the advisor has a little bit more of a planning role, strategic planning and control role than they did at Purdue. And as I meet people at all sorts of other chapters now, I won't call out specifics because that's their business if they want to air that or not of how they do things. But there's definitely chapters that are very chapter driven and the advisor is very hands off. And there's very much chapters that the advisor is carrying a lot of the load for making sure the program goes off, that, we have the meetings we plan to have and scheduling guests and those sorts of things. It really varies. But the key thing is that's common for all faculty advisors is a commitment to the students, because frankly, and something that a lot of students and members even don't realize is, in most cases, the role of faculty advisor is probably not a direct part of the faculty's job. It's unlikely. Most schools today are not like, well, if you were faculty advisor, you don't have to teach another class. Gotcha. Right? It's on top of teaching your classes. It's something extra. So typically your faculty advisors are doing it because they truly believe in it and they really want to help students. And it can be very time consuming. And even if the students are planning everything, just the hour or two a week of attending extra meetings, and especially winter meetings normally in the evenings. I'd like to be home with my family in the evenings, right? So it is a sacrifice for the advisors that the ones I know well do as a labor of love. They enjoy it. They wouldn't give it up for anything. So I'm certainly not trying to tell you to feel sorry for the advisors, but rather to say when advisors, push you to do your best or to do something, it's not in their own best interest. It's in yours. Because their own best interest would probably be to say, I don't need to be an advisor. Not much in this for me. We do this because we see the value it has for students' lives and the outcomes. And even in times like right now, where it seems like jobs are very plentiful and it's not all that difficult to get one compared to maybe how it was 5-7 years ago. Nonetheless, it's not just about getting a job, it's about getting the right job. And so I see frequently now that like a student that's been involved in Beta Alpha Psi, I have no doubt they'd have had a job, but they've got the job they really probably wanted because they had these experiences with an organization like Beta Alpha Psi and learned how to present themselves and how to communicate well. So they stood out in that interview. They had that self-confidence and, they got themselves in that envious position of 3, 4, 5 employers want them. And they're getting to pick as opposed to, well, that's the job offer I got and that's what I'm going to take. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm a fan of choice. Most of us are, right?
Yeah, great problem to have.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so, when it comes to the why for professors, and we also starting to now have professionals who are becoming chapter advocates, you really do see a benefit to the students that and also the chapters as well, that they have that guidance, especially for our petitioning chapters, because they need, for the most part, they need more hand-holding and that mentoring to figure out how to run the day-to-days of becoming a chapter. And then you have those advocates there in their corner to make sure that everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, and certainly new chapters, new advisors do typically need more or ask more support from the chapter advocates. Not always, but generally. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we try to do is to match them up with another chapter that we think has some similar characteristics. Maybe if the new chapter is at a mostly commuter campus, then maybe we try to find another chapter in their region or area that is also a commuter campus, because there might be unique challenges to chapters at commuter campuses that don't always apply to students, the student members at chapters, which are very highly residential in nature, or regional campuses, flagship universities versus their flagship campuses. And it's not a matter of like, this is better, or this is worse. And it's not a matter of we can't all learn from each other. But at that infancy stage, it's really helpful to know you're talking to someone that intimately understands the challenges you're facing, because they went through them too.
Right. Now, as far as promoting the accounting profession, I mean, you pretty much lived a life as an educator. What's that been like, as far as now you are essentially grooming the next generation of professionals?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly are. One of the things that I think startles me greatly as I think about my own career is things like doing this podcast with you, Riley, where I just get these surreal moments for a minute where I'm like sitting in a board meeting, or why do these people care what I think? Mm-hmm. Like that imposter syndrome really that I'm very intimately familiar with will creep in. And I'm like, at what juncture in my life did what I think suddenly matter to other people? Mm-hmm. And, I tend to think that's a positive. It's a humility thing and a recognition that I don't believe I'm special. I don't frankly believe I've met too many special people in my life. And I have yet to meet a Galileo, right? I've not had one in class. And I feel like that takes pressure off me and off you and off all of our students to say, you're not special. Mm-hmm. And that means your problems aren't special either. And that means you can get through what other people have gotten through. And it means don't have such ridiculously high expectations of yourself, because you're not that special. You can give yourself the grace to fail and learn and still do exceptional things. You can do special things. But the reality is, like, that's such a pressure-filled situation when somebody thinks that they're special and they've got these incredibly high expectations they hold themselves to. And one thing I've noticed over the years is some of the people that we might think of as the most special that we interact with, CEOs, leaders of industries, billionaires, et cetera, many of them, to hear them talk, will say similar things about, they don't think of themselves as special. They recognize their own humanity. They've let themselves fail. But it's so hard as a student, especially today when we're so exposed we're overexposed to the successes of others, is the way I like to say it, relative to the failures of others. Because not only social media, that's the easy thing to blame, but even like picking your news sources and other things, there's often, pretty stark segregation between the positive content and the negative content. So if you feel one way about our current president, Joe Biden, you can go read things that will say nothing but wonderful things about Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And you can go read things that will say nothing but bad things about Joe Biden. But most of us, we tend to favor overexposure of the people we want to emulate, and that we see as, making big contributions. And I think that can easily turn into a perception that, well, those people don't fail. They don't have struggles. They wouldn't have done that stupid thing I just did or whatever else. And that means I can't get to where they're at. I can't do what they do. And again, like, no, you're not that special. Don't hold yourself to some impossible standard. I think that's been, going back to your root question about the experience of being a faculty advisor, is something I learned really, really quickly, was that the best students, the ones that probably do have the most potential for extraordinary contributions, are often the ones that do understand that they're not special, that give themselves grace, that don't expect perfection out of themselves. And that doesn't mean some people that expect perfection don't reach high limits, et cetera. The heights and the limits, they do. But I think those people that don't do that to themselves have a lot easier path getting up there, and can accept the, it's kind of trite to say, but I think we heard it from a speaker this weekend, that, failure is it's generally a much better teacher than success. I mean, you retain the lessons from it, and it's easier to remember what didn't work sometimes than what did. And that's the sort of things that I think a faculty advisor brings to the relationship piece with the students, is those kinds of life lessons that come with, experience and, dare I say it, maturity, that it's impossible to have had if you're 20 or 21 years old. You just haven't been out in the workforce to have those things yet beat you down and realize that no matter how good you are, eventually you're going to fail at something. And how you respond to that is far more important than the fact that you failed and things like that. So I have very much enjoyed having that opportunity as a faculty advisor to, again, maybe protect students from themselves a little bit. And frankly, it's a lot easier for me as a faculty advisor to tell a student to give themselves some grace and to not be so hard on themselves sometimes than it is even as a parent who wants the best for their kid, or as a boyfriend or girlfriend, or who's going to bear some of the consequences of that person's choices, et cetera. So I do think there's also there's a little bit of a life coaching role that often goes with advising.
So you're really treating every failure as a learning opportunity. And I feel like that was really well said at our alumni panel. So we had some great speakers, and they got to talk about how, like, really give yourself grace and be able to treat each failure as a teacher in itself.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that you learn a lot quicker when you learn from your mistakes.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so on the flip side of the teaching aspect, now you've had various research that has been published with the Accounting Review, the Journal of Accounting Education, Journal of Accountancy, and the CPA Journal. So what has that been like when it comes to the research side for our listeners who are interested on the technical side of things?
I'm guessing that's about a fraction of a percent of the listening audience, but I'll talk anyway. That's okay. A lot of people don't even understand what
what's considered research.
Yeah, and even other professors in other disciplines will be like, well, I understand what, the chemistry faculty research, right? But what do accountants research? And it varies. And I tend to have a little bit of attention deficit. I tend to bounce all over the place and do some different things, if it's not already obvious listening to me talk. And so I've got a lot of diversity in the research I've done. And I tend to gravitate towards whatever I find just really interesting, whatever I keep finding myself thinking about, and genuinely curious about. Sometimes because I don't know the answer. Other times because I think I do know the answer and I want to prove it and be right. I mean, we're all human, right? There's some amount of that, of like, I know this is going on and I just want to see if I can show it or find it or whatnot. But I've been very fortunate. I've published in a couple of the premier accounting outlets on the academic side and a couple on the practitioner side. I'll admit that sometimes the research that is valued most by the universities, by the other professors, by the academy, as we say, is not always the research that the rest of the world cares about. And so the publications I've had in the Accounting Review or in auditing are publications I'm proud of. They took tremendous efforts on the parts of my co-authors and myself, and they make important contributions to research literature, but they aren't going to affect most likely anything about how your career goes, Riley.
Got it. Good to know.
On the other hand, yeah, I'm not giving you a reading assignment for tonight, that's for sure. But I think one of the articles you mentioned was a publication in Journal of Accountancy. That was several years ago. A colleague and I were just wanting to do an illustration, essentially, of, this was in 2015, I think, of just how much power Excel has today. And so we did an illustration of how you could do a Monte Carlo simulation, which is a specific type of statistics simulation technique that is attributed to originating as part of the Manhattan Project, for any fans of the Oppenheimer movie.
Nice.
And that is something that not that many years ago, you needed some significant horsepower and dedicated software to do anything like that. And now you can pretty easily do that inside of Excel. It's right there on your desktop. And so I think we did an illustration with loan covenant violations. We got, I don't know, 20, 30 emails from people thanking us for that or asking follow-up questions, et cetera.
Yeah.
That's impact to me. A lot of people got something useful out of that. And similarly, I've published a couple of accounting teaching cases that are used in classrooms that other faculty have used at other universities, et cetera. And again, I find those just really rewarding when someone reaches out and asks for that material, or even better, when somebody reaches out afterwards and tells me how it went and that they got something out of it. That's an opportunity for impact beyond your students, is now something you've worked to develop is being used by other students as well. And so there's a little bit of this perverse incentives problem that sometimes crops up in academia, is that the publications that are the most likely to matter to a faculty member to get them tenure and promoted and frankly, raises or moves on to higher paying jobs are those publications that the people that I'm the most concerned about, the people that are practicing accounting and the people that are going to be practicing accounting, the students, they're the least impactful to them. And so I've been lucky that I've been able to balance my time and do a little bit of both. I would encourage anybody going into the teaching profession that's going to have a research component to their job to make sure that they are somewhere that's going to let them do research that they find meaningful and valuable, and not just going somewhere that's going to pay the most money or give you the best favorable job terms, but you're going to be only able to research that can be published in journals that you don't care about. If that's how you feel, right? Now, if you care about those things and that's the most important to you, then great, right? Those schools can be great fits for you. But I think so often, the same way that we hear students sometimes feel that they're pressured to go take a specific accounting job after graduation. The classic example is, well, you need to go start at a Big Four. Many people start at a Big Four and have very successful careers, and that is the right fit for them. Many people, that's not the right fit for. And I don't really think that the Big Four offices, the recruiters I know, are not really interested in hiring people that don't really want to work there, but just feel like they have to. Fit matters, and what do you want to do? Because it's very unlikely you're going to go somewhere and that you don't really want to be and be successful there. Like, it just tends to ooze out of you that you're not really happy or doing what you want to do. And similarly, I think professors sometimes, when we're choosing jobs, can make that same mistake of like, well, you go to the school that has the best research resources and pays the most or whatever else to start your career as high as you can, and you can always move down. That same kind of thinking that people have about Big Four, where, well, if you're really flexible and open-minded and don't know what you want to do, that's great advice. But if you really know what you're passionate about and you know what you want to do and that's not it, don't put them through that or yourself, figure out where your fit is.
Right. No, for sure, because a lot of, you'll see the transition of a lot of, I guess, professionals who were previously at Big Four and then made next steps after that. So,
Sure.
I mean, it's very common, the transition. But for those who are able to maintain that career trajectory within Big Four, you see that they have a very successful career.
They have great careers with a high level of diversity. Someone I saw yesterday that was presenting actually had been with a large firm, had left that firm, and I was surprised. I hadn't talked to them in a couple of years, and was surprised to see the name tag was that firm again. And so
we have our boomerangs. Yeah,
right. And I asked about it, and it was, I was kind of burned out, so I thought I really wanted to do something that was maybe a little more predictable and stable, and I got bored really quickly, and I realized I actually was willing to work a little harder and be a little more challenged in exchange for having more diversity in my work tasks and my clients and those sorts of things. And that is a great thing about the accounting industry specifically. And from what I hear from friends in other areas, I think this is true throughout most of the business professions, that the finance majors, the business information or analytics majors, I think the same thing applies, that if you're good at what you do, if you work hard to make sure that what you do is something you're good at, there's always going to be opportunity up and down, and up and down on whatever metric you want to think of. If that means that firm size, bigger or smaller, if that means in client revenues, larger or smaller, if that means in scope of engagements, larger or smaller, if that means in specialization of the firm, larger or smaller, not better or worse, right? Just larger or smaller, there's opportunities to move. It's not the way some people, I think, fear it might be, that, well, if you don't start at the top, if you don't start at the larger end of these things, you'll never get to the larger end. No, you can move both ways and down, up and down the scale. You got to be good. And I think so much of being good is recognizing what is it I'm good at, and putting your energies there, provided it's something you enjoy and want to do. I mean, right, if you think about this, if you're thinking about what I want to do with my life, this broad question of what do I want to do with my career, where should I be? I think it's very unlikely that you're going to be highly successful doing something that you're not happy doing. I think it's very unlikely that you're going to be very good and successful at perform highly at something you don't enjoy doing. And I think it's very unlikely that you're going to be happy doing something just because you're good at it. Like, the intersection of the two is the sweet spot. Finding that, maybe it's not the thing you're best at. Maybe the thing you are absolute best at is something that will not bring you any happiness because you hate it. Or maybe it's the thing that I'm absolutely best at is not going to provide me the standard of living I want to have. But that doesn't mean I have to be a sellout and go to the other extreme, right? Maybe there's a slight adjustment on that I can find, that here's something I'm really good at and I really enjoy. It may not be my favorite thing to do, and it may not be the thing that I'm best at, but when I put the two together, this is like the best combination. Those are the people I see have the most satisfying, successful careers. As I watch so many students years after graduation and stalk them on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff, and I see over and over that it's the ones that found that. It's the one that could have, I have no question, is good enough, could be successful at a very large, high stress firm, but who recognizes I could also be successful at a really strong firm that's not quite as high stress, maybe not quite as high pressure, and I'll be a lot happier. The success there seems so much higher.
Yeah, you can really see it when it makes a difference if that individual has that passion, because it ends up with creating that drive for whatever that person wants to do. So really, you phrased it perfectly, having that intersection of that passion, the drive, and being able to not necessarily do it perfectly, but you have that drive behind you to want to continue doing it and to get better and improve yourself with it. And so that was another piece too when it came to having passion and being more engaged. Now, you've been involved with the American Accounting Association, and you served as correct me if I'm wrong, served as president and currently council representative.
So I was president of the Midwest region
Okay.
Of the American Accounting Association several years ago. And then, yes, I've been the elected council rep for the region for the last several years, 5, I think. And that is something that's not within my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. I am definitely somebody that has to make themselves do those things. People are often surprised to hear this, especially if they've been in my classes, to learn, if they get to know me well after graduation, and, if we're friends enough that we have lunch occasionally, that sort of thing, they'll realize and be kind of surprised. I'm actually kind of introverted. Mm-hmm. Like that. No, there's a certain amount of performance and theatrics that goes to being successful in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And so, I might come across one way, but if in terms of like my choice is to go be at a reception with 200 people and go talk to everybody and network and pal around, or go sit back in the hotel room and catch up on whatever I'm watching on Netflix, I have to make myself go to the reception. And it's not because I hate people. It's not because I don't want to be around these people. It's just that's who I am. I do get drained by lots of people.
Social battery.
Right, exactly. And so the AAA involvement largely came out of a recognition that, I've done a lot of things that get me these great connections with students, but that's one piece of the group of people I work with in my profession, right? There's also other people like me. And so being more involved in the AAA has got me an opportunity to know people at schools of all sizes and kinds, people that are research superstars, people that have had phenomenal careers that brought that expertise into the classroom as clinical or teaching professors who've never done any research in their entire lives, and an academic research meaning, and have no desire to do it, and everything in between. Because of the time I've spent doing those things at AAA. And I think that even it so often is the case that getting close to those events, I will start, dreading's the wrong word, but there's parts of the experience I'm dreading. I don't really want to do that. And I have to push myself a little bit. That hasn't changed about me in all the years of doing it. It's still the case. But I make myself do it because I know I'm going to be glad I did afterwards, right? It's one of those, like, what, this may not be that, many people can get this analogy with, I don't really feel like exercising today. I don't really feel like hitting the gym, but man, you really feel great after you did. And if you don't, and then you kind of hate yourself the rest of the day for letting yourself down and all that. And so I try to remind myself of that and make myself do those things. But I've never quite felt that way with BAP, because the truth is I feel a lot more comfortable, I think, with the students, and maybe I see a little more obvious impact and value to what I'm doing than I did sometimes with networking with my colleagues. But no, it's definitely proven that what everybody says to you at Beta Alpha Psi about the importance of networking and building relationships is, I almost hate that networking term. It's because it means so many things to so many people, and it sounds like a task, right? And it really should not be a task to get to know other people.
It's something that comes naturally.
Hopefully.
You want it to be organic, but there are times where you have to be essentially comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, you're putting yourselves in those different situations. Like, for me personally, I totally understand the concept of being an introverted extrovert. So, I mean, for example, you saw it here before. For our listeners that obviously you can't see what goes on right before we start the episode, but I have to pump myself up. I have to get pumped up before going into that opening, that intro. So, but I definitely know where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think it's something we just can't communicate enough to students that I tend to think, and I can't say I've done any research or serious reading on this, so perhaps the literature would disagree with me, but I tend to think we attract a lot of those extroverted introverts, as you said, in the accounting and adjacent professions, that there's some features to the job that attracts people that are like that actually do like being social and like talking to other people and et cetera, but also value the fact that there's a big part of their job that has them working on their own and very responsible for their own work and tasks and not having to coordinate with everybody else and not being dependent immediately on the work of somebody else every minute of every day. And yeah, so I think we get a lot of students like that, but I also have found over the years that we don't always do the best job as a society, as a profession, especially of communicating that, yeah, it's okay to be introverted. That is not a negative attribute. The negative attribute comes about if you become adversarial with others or standoffish, if you allow yourself to be presented as inflexible or unwilling to engage, when in reality, that's not who you are. But you have to take that initiative in some way to communicate. Just because I don't want to go out with you guys tonight and I want to go in and watch my show doesn't mean I don't value what you do or value this relationship with you. Because unfortunately, yeah, and I don't know that in you or I's lifetime we'll see that change. It might just be a basic human bias that we tend to associate that introversion with some sort of standoffishness or unwillingness to engage. And that's just not the case.
Right. And so interesting enough, it makes me wonder about, or brings me to your current position as the chair of the upcoming annual meeting in Orlando for Beta Alpha Psi's annual meeting. What has that process been like for you?
It's been interesting, and I'm going to jump in and correct because I don't think we've publicized this well, but I'm actually co-chairing the meeting with our friend Mackenzie.
Oh yes, co-host. She's a co-host on the podcast.
So Mackenzie is working with me on this meeting, and we basically, I think, had a joint vision of let's look at the last several meetings and take the best parts and blow them up. Just focus on those things. Mm-hmm. And when I say the best, that doesn't mean the other parts were bad. It means that they weren't the best. We've not said that we want to get rid of other things because they're not good. We've said, let's just do the best. Let's try to really focus in on doing the best things. And so we've done some schedule adjustments. We're looking to make sure that there's lots of opportunities for students to spend time outside of the scheduled conference activities with both their own chapter and with other chapters.
Okay, I like that.
Lots of opportunities to build relationships in that way and in the most organic way possible, right? Because there's no better way to build a relationship, professional or personal, than doing something both people enjoy, right? Hands down, the best way to build any kind of meaningful relationship with anybody and to support and nurture any kind of meaningful relationship with anybody is doing something you both enjoy. And so why is it that so much business, quote unquote, it's a generous word, gets done on the golf course? Well, because people like to play golf. Mm-hmm. Why are business lunches such a thing? People like to eat. And so when we do those things at meetings that give you guys the opportunity as students to be doing things you want to do with each other, whether it be outside activities and visiting the local sites, going places. With us being in Orlando this year, I'm guessing more than a few students will make a trip to a theme park. I know Riley's got the best story of how valuable that can be.
Well, and I like that too, that you guys are encouraging that cross-chapter interaction, for lack of a better word, because I mean, you know the story, that it was at an annual meeting where I met my wife, and it was because me and the president of her chapter were both teamed up on the community service event. And I think you were actually the guy on the bus that was our person when we were going to, I think we went to a middle school.
Was that in Anaheim?
In Anaheim, yep.
Yes, I do think I remember you from that actually. So,
yeah. So it was, we got to volunteer, and it was a kind of like a financial day of literacy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the students, I think they were like middle school age. They range different age groups, but it was funny because the students, they thought that I was a YouTuber, and I'm sure he's a great guy. Guava Juice. So Guava Juice, if you're tuning into this, a huge shout out to you. I may have impersonated you for a little bit.
And thanks for tuning in.
And so, but yeah, I mean, the students got a real kick out of it, and they had me sign their book that we gave them. And so that was a really fun time. And it resulted in the president of the Western Washington chapter, and we coordinated that our chapters meet up at Disneyland for the Friday night event, because I think we also, BAP provided tickets, like discounted tickets.
Yeah, you were able
Disneyland
to purchase tickets, and
which sold out very quickly.
Sneak peek, we're going to try to do something like that for 2024. It may not be Disney, but we're Mackenzie and I we're turning over every stone. We're working on it.
Oh, I love that. Okay, regardless of whatever it is, I'm sure the students are gonna eat it up. And so, but it was at that moment that including this, or being able to coordinate this cross chapter meetup, that's where I met my wife at Disneyland. And so, I mean, the rest is history when it comes to post graduation and us living our lives together and whatnot. And I mean, we're actually, I don't know if I told you, but we're expecting our first.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. And so she'll be due, I think a month after the annual meeting. So end of August.
I kind of feel bad for you guys and the number of Beta Alpha Psi baby things you're probably going to be receiving.
I'm not against it.
That's the Bat baby. Your poor kid may be a mascot. You're gonna have to fight that. I hope you're okay with their social media presence. That's great. That's really exciting for you guys. And I do think those are the stories that need told more. Not that we would like to use Beta Alpha Psi primarily as a matchmaking service. That's probably
no guarantees.
Yeah, no guarantees, and we would rather not be the priority reason of your visits. That's putting pretty high expectations on us to deliver. Mm-hmm. But that is about that, as I kind of let us off with earlier, about just being present, just being there, right?
Right.
Had you chose not to go to that meeting, or had she chose not to go to that meeting, I'm going to bet that one or both of you had other things you could have been doing that weren't objectionable, whether it been a family trip activity in the summer, or another week of getting paid on your internships, or whatever it was, but you chose to make yourself available to meet people and to build relationships, and you ended up building one of the most important ones you'll ever have in your life.
For sure. And with that being said, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to, but looking back, what is your favorite Beta Alpha Psi memory to wrap things up?
Oh gosh.
I know it's a very big question.
That is a tough one. I'll give a couple small ones that jump out at me very quickly. One of which is I've got a picture from the first time we were in Anaheim in 2013, maybe, of a student that I knew, a Purdue student who was an officer and who had not really ever had the opportunity to travel out of state, and he was so excited about everything. And I think I've still got on my wall to this day a picture of him doing the Buzz Lightyear ride with the ray guns, and you're shooting at the targets. A picture of us that printed on those little things at the end that you could take. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe it was
like the post-ride pictures
digital.
kind of
yeah,
thing?
but it wasn't a paid for deal. It was either like you just snapped it on your I don't remember, but long and short, I've got this picture that on the wall that like
That is so cool.
just from, and I have a lot of pictures like that on my wall, but that one stands out just because it was meaningful to me to see that student getting to do something that their life hadn't provided them the opportunity to do. And I certainly did not grow up financially privileged in any way. But we still had gotten out of state a couple times and done a few things. And it was kind of a reminder too, that I might not have been financially privileged, but there's a lot less privileged yet, that he hadn't had those opportunities. That stands out to me. The two of the alums rather that were on the panel yesterday, are former students of mine from Purdue. They're twins. And because of their dad was a partner at a pretty large accounting firm out of Indiana, another state, and one of his connections was gracious enough to come and speak to our Beta Alpha Psi banquet dinner one year.
Oh, cool.
And so their parents came with this person who was a family friend, and so I really got to know their parents really well. Actually, a couple times when I was in there, they were from St. Louis. So when I was in their area, I got to have a meal with them and just some of that memory building. But all that said, I'll tell you the biggest one, the one that's really like stood out to me is like the impact you get to have in the world. My second daughter was born in 2012, and she was born in October. And our chapter at Purdue had a tradition of doing its initiations like the weekend before finals week. We would have a luncheon or a dinner or something and to do initiations. And so we were having a luncheon on a Sunday morning, a Sunday brunch sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I can't recall why, but my wife was doing something with our older daughter. And so I brought the baby, who was probably 6-7 weeks old, maybe 8 at the most at the time, with me to this banquet. And one of our officers had grown up in China, and several of the other people that were there, frankly, I'm not trying to be biased or say anything overly stereotypical, but mostly young women were asking, can I hold the baby?
Oh,
can I see the baby, right? And yes, we're
pass the baby around.
It's the Midwest, right? We're all so used to having colds and everything else, and maybe it's different now post COVID. I don't know, but I certainly didn't think twice about And it was the second kid, right? For most of us, you'll find if you have more than one, your level of paranoia does decline exponentially
with each kid.
With with being sharing the kid, and so. One of my officers, I said, was from China, and when I asked, I said, do you want to hold Grace? And she looked at me, and I could tell she was a little apprehensive that I was offering, but I can. Well, of course. Like, why would I let that? And so she held her, and I snapped some pictures right while we were doing this, and I sent that young woman a picture. Of her holding my daughter and said, hey, thought you might want this picture. This is really cool. Thanks again, etc. I got a note probably a month or two later that had obviously been a labor to write because it wasn't the first language from the student's mom.
Oh, okay.
Who just was enthralled with the idea that I, as a teacher at this school in a country pretty literally halfway around the world, was trusting her daughter to hold my child. And it was not I would love to say I meant that as some big meaningful act. I didn't. It was just something I was very comfortable with. But I mean, I could just, the level of emotion that was written, even in this broken English that I struggled to read parts of without asking for help, was nonetheless, like, it was just clear this was meaningful to this woman, that someone in another country had let her daughter hold their child. And obviously there's cultural differences in how protective people are of their children between different cultures, different countries, et cetera. I know that played into that. But I just thought that was like, that's not the kind of impact I expect that I would be having on the world when I said, yeah, I'll be a faculty advisor, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think I would be making some cross-cultural connection or breaking some potential barrier by doing that. It's just this reminder of like, it's so hard to know what the things you're doing in your life are that are truly going to be meaningful to other people. That's the best argument there is for doing your best at everything. Right? Like, because you don't know which of these things is going to be that, transformative, critical thing outside of Beta Alpha Psi. But a little less than a year ago, I got what I thought was an honor, but maybe not. Turned out to be a bucket list item I didn't know I had.
Okay.
I had a group of students from Purdue that were. I was closer in age to, because that happens when you teach. I keep getting older, but they don't. And so at the time, I would have been closer in age to this group when I first started teaching. And it was some of the first officers of that other student group that I advised, and they've all stayed fairly close. And two different presidents of that organization, that accounting club, a few years apart, have been together off and on, and almost a year ago now, got married. And they reached out to me, and we're fairly close. We talk often, et cetera. And I was kind of a little nervous. Hope they don't listen to this. I was kind of a little nervous when they asked if I could, hey, can we talk and jump on a call? And I was like, please don't ask me to be a groomsman or an usher or something. I did that. My wife and I did that to the high school teacher that introduced us. And I feel so bad for doing that to him now, because
oh man,
we were 21 and everybody else is up there's 21 and he was 55. I feel bad looking at that. I had to feel so awkward to him, but God bless him, he did it for us. And so I'm hoping that please don't ask that. Please don't ask that. Well, they didn't.
Okay.
They asked me if I would marry them.
Oh man, what an honor.
And I had to explain that is not included in the rights you get with a PhD. That is not one of the privileges of having a doctorate. You don't get to marry people with your professorship. But of course, well, you can go online and do.
Yeah.
And so my inclination was to say no. And I expect I would have said no to most anybody else that had asked. Just not my thing. For some reason, I said yes. And I still, to this day, I'm like, I don't know if anybody else had asked. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Was that the first?
Those
backup?
two they're special to me. I'll fully acknowledge they're great people, share a lot in common with, and we're just a neat group of people as a group of friends from those years of those groups. So I ended up doing it. But even then, in the back of my head, I'll tell you, Riley, I gave him one condition. I said, I'll do this on the condition that if at any point up until 10 minutes before the ceremony, you come to your senses and want someone else to do this, you'll do it. You'll change it. You'll know I will not be hurt. I won't be offended, because I really thought that maybe part of this was just, it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
That they knew a lot of other people were going to be coming that had been students at Purdue that I would have had, and that look, Dr. Stan's marrying him. That's what I go by with the undergrads most of the time. And, that they would think that was hilarious. So I really kind of felt that way. And then I get there the night before for the rehearsal dinner. And one of their moms comes up and gives me a hug, and she is almost crying and tells me, thank you for doing this. We told them when they said they were going to ask you, you can't add. That's a big ask. I would not count on that. And we just were so surprised but it just meant so much to them. And then I was kind of choked up, I kind of thought
this I would
was
too.
kind of part of an inside joke. I didn't realize I was actually this was I felt honored, but turns out it was a big honor, and it meant something a lot to them. And I say all that to say the opportunity to have a meaningful impact on people's lives is what makes being an educator exciting and rewarding, and in all the ways that comes about. I don't think I don't know what moment could possibly top that in terms of feeling, of having a personal relationship with students, right? I don't know what could possibly beat that. And now that I've shared this story a few times, I always disclaimer that like I'm not doing it again.
Oh, I was about to
Right?
ask.
That was like, a one.
What
I
state
tell
are
my
we?
yeah when this comes up, I'm always like, I shouldn't say never, but I'm not planning on doing that again. It was a lot of fun. Turns out it was a bucket list item, and
You check it off.
It just goes back to, as I said, that it's just these opportunities to have a real meaningful impact on people's lives. That I may not feel like I had, that I don't really feel like is an honor I deserve, but I still take it, the fact that it can happen, as a serious responsibility that like I, got to give my A game, got to make sure I'm always doing my best and giving every opportunity to reach these students. Cause you don't know when you're getting to that person that really it's going to mean a lot to.
Right. No, it's for sure one of those things that you don't really notice, so you kind of take for granted, but it really does have such a meaningful impact to those that, for the students, that as we see, at least what I can imagine from the professor side, that you would see all these students come and go and not really see how much of an impact you're really making. But when it does make itself known and really puts itself out there that, hey, I actually am making a difference in these students' lives, I can only imagine how much of how much pride comes with it.
It's very rewarding, and it's very also, you start thinking about the butterfly effect of that, if you would, that, what impact I've had on them, and then I see the impact they go have. Like one of those people in that group went on, did VITA with me.
Okay.
Did tax returns. We did primarily at that time, we were working with a homeless shelter in the community, and we did low-income returns there. And when she moved on to another city in Indiana, she continued doing VITA and actually began running their program for several years.
Oh my gosh,
so I'm
that's
like,
so cool.
Like I didn't just help make sure these returns here got done, but I made sure those returns got done indirectly, right? Because I introduced this person that if I had not made that VITA relationship and brought that in, and like it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, the
It
person
might
really
not have happened anyway.
Person really hit the ground running.
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
And those are the things that I don't want this to come across as like, well, so if you're an educator, you can do these things. Look, I mean, I don't think that the educator relationship is one opportunity, but the staff to intern relationship, the manager to staff relationship, the partner to manager relationship, like these opportunities exist throughout your career to have meaningful impact on the lives of other people. And while I would never advocate that you should be doing these things with networking in mind, like that your objective should be that if I build these close, deep personal relationships, that the reward to me will be that I'm more successful in my career. My personal ethos would say that's just deplorable. That shouldn't be what's driving you.
Right.
But there can be personal benefits to it too, without it being wrong, right? That I would like to think if someone thought highly enough of me to ask me to do something like that, they would certainly think to throw up my name for a position that somebody thought I might be interested in, and that they knew somebody was hiring for. Right. Like it's not the goal, but yeah, it's a
byproduct.
It's a byproduct. That's a great word. And it's a great one.
Yeah. Now I wish we can keep this going on, because I feel like we have stories on stories, but unfortunately we are cutting it close on time. But Jason, thank you for tuning in and guesting on this week's
thank you, Riley. I'm
episode.
glad I got to join you, and maybe sometime in the future we'll tackle a specific topic. And
for sure. We're
going
going
to
have
this
you
again without me rambling with stories.
No, we love the stories. The stories make up the episodes, and I mean, it's been a phenomenal time. And then for our listeners, be sure to like, subscribe, follow us from whatever platform you're tuning in from. Also, check out the show notes for our various social media pages and official BAP swag. And again, Jason, thank you for guesting on the podcast. It was such a pleasure to hear your story. And with that,
thank you, Riley.
Exactly. And we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional. Hey everyone, Riley here with the credits. This episode, titled Advising Adventures on and Off the Clock, was hosted by myself, Riley Ramos, and accompanied by our very special guest, Jason Stanfield, aka Dr. Stan. Music was sourced from Resolute Audio and fine-tuned music on Adobe Stock. Huge shout out to Beta Alpha Psi and the national chapter for their financial support and keeping the podcast going strong as always. If you haven't already, please join the alumni and member network. Details can be found in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional.